Hey, hi everyone. Hello. Okay, so I see some chats. Okay. Okay, so I see first chat from Patrick saying you joined today and you thought today is the first class. So today is not the first class. It's a continuous cohort, right? It's been happening from past 8 weeks. I think this is the ninth week. Uh, but all the classes that you have missed, you can still get the recording. You can download it and catch up. But let's say if you have still concerns, probably you can send an email to support at Lighthall, and you can keep me in CC. Uh, okay, so I see we have 50 plus learners already. Okay, please show how to delete duplicate data with window function. Okay, so let's start with that first. Okay, today let's see how to delete duplicate data using window function. It's actually pretty simple. Uh, you because you know window functions already, and you should probably understand how to use window function to delete duplicate data. But I'll show you anyways. And then we'll continue with recursive SQL queries today, and then after recursion, we'll then move on to pivot tables. Okay, so that's the plan for today. I hope everyone has downloaded the recording, and no one has any issues in downloading the recording. And regarding the assignment, has everyone? I think in the last week, probably I gave one whole case study which had uh, it was Chinook database, 19 problems as part of that case study. And then there was another SQL interview questions. I think there are 15 SQL interview questions. So has everyone looked at those problems and tried to solve it? And did you like those problems? Did you like the case study and also the interview problems? Okay, so you purchased a pen drive for that. Okay, that's good. Okay, so Kevin, you spent when you say past assignments, the assignments before last week's, right? Okay, that's good. You first finish every assignment that was given before last week, and then move on to this case study and the interview problems. Okay, the Lighthall platform is getting shut down. I think probably 15th of August. So from 15th of August, I think this platform is not going to be available. So that is why we are giving you the option to download the recording and keep it with you forever. Initially, when you purchase this course, we had told that you can only access it for 1 year. But because the platform is shutting down, we cannot basically keep the recording. And that is why there is an option now that you can download it. Previously, you did not have that option. No one else, not even from all the previous cohort, no one had the option to download. So you guys are getting that option to download the recording because the platform is shutting down. So it was unexpected. Um, After bootcamp, how long recording? It's taking time to understand the problem statement. Class file, it has the same. Yeah, let's quickly go anti-join. Anti-join, semi-anti-join, no, Kader. That's not, I don't think so. I'm not even sure what you mean by anti-join and semi-anti-join. Uh, I think you can easily Google that as well. But that's not part of the class plan. When are you planning to start Python? Okay. Okay, before I start, right, one quick update. I will be starting a Python bootcamp from, I think it's going to be from, if I just look at the date, it's going to be second week of August. Okay. Uh, I don't know the exact date. I haven't decided. Actually, this week I'm just working on the uh, like the course content and all of those things. But and I will be doing this Python bootcamp on a different platform because Lighthall is not going to be there, of course. So I have shortlisted one new platform, and they will incorporate the course through my own website. So I'm sure everyone already knows about my website, techtfq.com. So I'll probably have this bootcamp conducted on my platform itself. Okay. It I will be helped by another platform, but yeah. So it's again going to be a live class like this. I think I'm not sure how exactly it's going to be, but what I think it's probably going to be a Zoom call. Okay, I am assuming so. Probably you guys can I can see you and I can hear you. So it's not just chat interaction, but also I think similar to a Zoom call. Like everyone, I think are aware of Zoom call, right? So it will be for complete beginners. Okay, so we'll start from absolute scratch Python, and we'll of course do some projects and everything. But I am still working on the course content currently. Um if anyone is interested, it would be good if you can register, because I think I'll have very less time for people to register. And also I know in that new platform there is a limitation on how many people can join. Okay, I don't know exactly what is the count, but I think they have a limitation on it cannot be unlimited like what we had in Lighthall. So probably if anyone is interested, you should join as soon as possible. But I will announce it hopefully in the next 10 days. uh okay. So I got offer from. Okay, so Priyanka says I got offer for BI analyst, and in interview he asked me about indexes, but I didn't know how to write query. We'll discuss about indexes. I'm not covering during this class. I will probably I'll probably do another course related to performance tuning where I'll cover indexes, but not part of this bootcamp. You can do all the assignments in MS Server or any other relation database you have. Whatever assignment is given, you can do it in any RDBMS. Okay, it's all SQL. Any database that uses SQL, you can basically do all the assignments. Okay, anyone? Probably someone can help how to download the recording. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with today's class. First of all, let's start with how to delete duplicate data. Okay, so Python Bootcamp I have still not released. I'm still in the building phase of it. Okay, I will announce it. I think I have all of your email IDs. I'll probably drop you guys an email as well, and then I'll announce it in my YouTube and LinkedIn as well. BigQuery is also a relational database. It's like a cloud-based data warehouse. It is basically owned by Google, but it also uses SQL. So they're all basically, if you know SQL, you can work on BigQuery and so many other RDBMS. Okay, so first question: how do you delete duplicate data using window function? Can anyone tell me? There are so many. We have seen, I think, few different window functions. Let's say you have a table, there are duplicate data, you want to remove duplicate data from that table. What window function you could probably use to remove duplicate data from that table? Can anyone guess? Until then, I'll just try to find a data set which I had used for explaining duplicate data. Does anyone remember in which class I covered duplicate data deletion thing? I'll need to find out. Using row number. Okay, so most of you say row number, right? And you guys are right. So let's do one thing. Let me just share my screen. And I don't remember which particular class it was when I talked about handling duplicate data. So instead of trying to find that data set, I'll try to create a data set right now. Okay. Let's say I'll just create simple. So let's say I'm going to create a table. Just give me a table name. Anything. It was session 10. Okay, but let me just create a sample table here right now. Student. Okay, so let's create a table food. Okay, or okay, so let's create something different. Any data set that you guys want, which we have never used. Any guesses? We have used banking, we have used insurance, I think we have used paintings, we have used sales, we have used so many different data sets. Anything that comes to your mind? Cricket, hotels, restaurants. Okay, something more generic. Okay. Okay, let's keep let's make restaurants. Okay, so create table restaurants, and let's say it's going to have some columns like ID. Okay, and ID is an integer, and then I'll have name, it's a varchar. Okay, I'll say 100, and then I'll have location, it's again a varchar of, let's say, 200, and then I'll have manager. Okay, or restaurant manager, and let's say it's an ID or something. Okay, or whatever, just some sample table. So I'm just going to create this table, and I'm going to insert some data into this table. So let's say insert into this values, and I'll say one, and restaurant name, any favorite restaurants that you guys have. uh, I'm just going to name one here, Sphinx, and it's going to be location is Warsaw, and manager is, let's say, EM1. Okay, and let's insert a few more records. Okay, okay, five records. Okay, I hope the syntax is right, but let's see. Okay, so any other one is Sphinx, and then maybe, I don't know. Okay, Zaitun. Actually, Zaitun was my most favorite restaurant in Bangalore. So in Bangalore, M2, then some other. Udupi Grand. Okay, I am from Udupi, so let's use this restaurant, and location will be Udupi, and the manager is M3. Okay, and now I'll have the same thing copied here. Okay, so let's have this data, and let me create this data. So I have inserted 5 records into this table, and let's start from this table, and you can see that I have, okay, and I gave the ID same. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's create a different ID. Drop table, create table 2 3. Okay, and then let's run this. Okay, so I have this table which has 5 records, information about some restaurants, their location and their manager. But I can see that this record, that is with the restaurant Sphinx, is kind of repeated thrice, right? Now I want to remove the duplicate data. When I want to remove the duplicate data, I should only remove 2 of them. So I have 3 records which are the same. I only have to remove 2. I have already shown you different methods of, I think we have seen 5 or 6 different ways of deleting duplicate data. We did not see using window function. So using window function, like you guys said, what we can do is, I know some of the records here are duplicated, right? In this particular case, this is duplicated thrice, right? What I can do is, I can basically create a row number for every record. Okay, and then probably I can yeah, so then probably, okay, so I can create, okay, so one is with row number. So if I create a row number, then what happens? I will get unique row number for every record, right? 1 2 3 4 5. Then how will I remove the duplicate data? Can anyone guess what else can we use to what else can we do in window function to remove duplicate data? Any ideas that comes to your mind? Dense rank, okay. Anything else, like, so there is, if you just use one particular thing, you can solve this problem using row number itself. Can you guess what would that be? Okay, partition by what? Partition by what? Partition by ID. Okay, probably we can use ID because ID is also duplicated here, right? So what I can do is, I can say row number, and then I say over, and I say partition by ID, and order by, I will have it order by ID itself. Okay, and I'm just going to call it RN. Okay, and now when I run this, now you can see that I have, for these 3 duplicate records, I have 3 different row numbers. Okay, basically because it partitioned based on the ID. So it was one window. Within that window, there are 3 records. So the row number is 1, 2, and 3. Whereas for every other record where the ID is unique, it will always have the ID, it will just have one record within that window, right? And then it will always have the row number as one, right? Now, if I have to remove duplicate data from here, what I just need to do is I delete all the data, all the records in this table wherever the row number is not equal to 1, right? Anywhere the row number is not equal to 1, so that means these 2 records should probably get deleted, right? So that is, but you delete the first one. No, I'll not delete the first one. I'll delete the one where I have 2 and 3. Okay, so now I can do that. Okay, now there are a couple of ways I can do that. So let's do one way using CTID. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I will have this, and I'm just going to have CTID. Okay, now I hope everyone knows what is CTID. If you have watched my previous videos, you would know it. Okay, so the CTID is unique, right? For every record, the CTID is unique, right? I need to identify those records where the row number is anything other than 1, and I'll get some CTIDs, and I just delete the record with that CTID. So what I can just do is delete from restaurants where CTID is in whatever I get here. So from this particular query here, I'll just say select from, I'll move this to the right, I'll give an alias like X, and yeah, and here I'll just tell from select star from this. Okay, and here I'll just tell where x.rn is not equal to 1. Okay, so if I run this query, now you can see that I'm getting the 2 duplicated records where the row number is 2 and 3, and I'm only interested in this particular column. So what I'll do from here, I'll just fetch CTID is this one, that is 4 and 5, right? Now what I'll do is I'll put this whole query as a subquery here. Okay, and now this is going to fetch me those 2 duplicated CTID, and then it is going to delete that CTID from the restaurant table, right? So now if I run this, now you can see that 2 records have been deleted. And if I go back into my restaurant table, you will see that the duplicate data is deleted. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. No, CTID is not same as identity is a different thing, right? What is identity? Does anyone remember? What is identity? It's part of like a constraint, right? It's basically, like you said, it's auto generation. If you want to make a particular, when I was creating this column integer, here I could basically make it like identity, or I think identity 1 comma 1 is a syntax used in probably SQL Server or something, but here it would be what is that by default? Yeah, I think there is some syntax, I don't remember properly, but yeah, which we have already seen in, I think, in our early classes. So you can do anything. You can do here row number not equal to 1 or greater than 1, whatever. Okay, and here you don't even have to do partition by ID, because you could also do partition based on the hotel name. Okay, or yeah, so I think a combination of hotel name and location. Okay, so whatever column is with which you can identify like that duplicated records, then those columns can be part of the partition by. Okay, yeah, so this was it was very fast, mainly because I have already covered window functions and deleting duplicate data previously. So try to maybe just, this is not that complex a query. Do you think this is was it very difficult to understand? Because we have already covered all window functions in detail in the previous classes, so I do not want to spend again time explaining window functions again. Okay, so this was just because someone was asking about this deletion of duplicate records using window function from the past, I think, couple of weeks, and that is why I showed you. I hope this is clear. I don't remember who asked this. Now let's move on to today's topic. Okay, you can probably watch the recording, or I'll share the scripts after the class. You can just try to play around that script. Okay, let's start with today's topic. Okay, so okay, so we were talking about recursion, right? Now let's do one thing. I'm going to take a new data set for this. Okay, and I have a question here. So I'll create a new data set here, and it's going to be an employee details table, which has some relation employee details already exist. So let me drop and create it. Okay, and then, okay, so now I have a new table with me here by the name employee details. Okay, first of all, let us understand what this table holds, and then we will try to solve some problem. I have an employee ID, I have the employee name, I have the manager ID, their salary, and their designation. You can see that Shripad is an employee and he does not have any manager, and he's the CEO. His salary is 10,000 something. Then there is Satya, who has a manager ID 5. He's a software engineer. And you can see that 5 is basically the employee Michael, right? So Michael basically is an employee, and his employee ID is 5, but he's manager to 3 different employees, Satya, Jia, and David, right? So basically what I mean to say is, in this table I have information about employees and their managers. Okay, so I hope this table is clear. It's not, is it too small? Let me know if I need to zoom, if I need to zoom in the text. Okay, or if it is fine, mm, just let me know if it is not big enough. It's fine. Okay, I can zoom a little. Okay, so when we write the solution, then probably I'll zoom out. Okay, now the problem that I have is I need to find the hierarchy of employees under a given manager. Okay, now in the previous class we talked about recursion, and I think someone during the end of the class asked, where do you use recursion? Okay, so and I answered saying that the most widely used scenarios where recursion is used is basically whenever you need to find some hierarchy. Okay, when I say hierarchy, it's basically when you need, so one common place can be this particular example. You have a manager, so for example, let's say they're asking us to find all the employees under the manager Asha. Okay, now if I look at this particular table, I have Asha here. Okay, she is a manager, and her employee ID is 7. Okay, but under Asha, she basically has some employees under her, okay, working under her. So you can see that I can see there are 2 employees, Michael and Arvind. These are the 2 employees whose managers are number 7. Number 7 is basically Asha, right? So Asha has 2 employees working under her, Michael and Arvind. But then Michael has an employee ID 5, and this 5 is basically present here. That means there are 3 more employees who are working under Michael, right? So Satya, Jia, and David. Now, if I have to tell you the hierarchy, I can say that there is Asha. Asha has 2 employees under her, Michael, and who is it? Arvind. Okay, and then Michael again has 3 employees under him. Okay, working under him. So that is Satya, Jia, and David. Okay, so if I have to tell the hierarchy would be Asha. Below her comes Michael and Arvind, and then again below Michael comes Satya, Jia, and David. Okay, so then again, if David also was a manager, he had some employees, and even that should come up. Okay, so when you have this kind of a requirement where you need to find something, and then whatever result you have found, within that result again you have to do that same search. Okay, so this hierarchical searching within for a data, right? This basically is a very good example where you should use recursion. Okay, so we'll try to solve this problem using that. Okay, now if you remember what we discussed in the last class, you would know when we are writing recursion, there is a basic syntax that you need to follow for recursion. Can anyone, I'll give you 1 minute. Can anyone paste the syntax for a recursion SQL query here? You don't have to give me the entire query. Just the basic syntax. Okay, what does it have, and like all the base queries that we talked about, the recursive part of the query, the termination condition, everything. Does everyone remember how a recursive SQL query is written? Anyone? Let's see. I'll give you a minute. Anyone who can just give me the syntax of that? Okay, so Vikas says with recursive name as base query, recursive query. Okay, Vikas, you missed two things in that. So Santosh says base query and subquery. No, I'm looking for someone who can answer like Vikas. Vikas gave the right answer, but he missed a couple of things. Anyone who can fix what Vikas gave? I'll just copy what Vikas gave here. So, and I'll put it here. So this is what Vikas gave me. Okay. And he said base query and then recursive query, but there are a couple of things missing. It's important that you remember these syntaxes. Okay. These are uh, like how you use a window function, the syntax for a window function, the syntax uh, for this with clause, the syntax for a recursion. In the future, today that we'll discuss about pivot, the syntax for pivot. These are all slightly different from your regular SQL syntaxes. So those things you should try to practice. Okay, and it's not practicing just by looking someone else solve it. You need to solve it yourself. Then only you'll remember. Okay, so right, he missed union all. So there was a union or a union all, whatever you want. And then there is one more thing that is missed in this query. Can anyone tell me? Okay, there are two more things that is missed in this query. Can anyone tell me that? One time iteration, union all, recursion with run. Okay, termination condition, right? So one is termination condition, and there's one more thing that is missed in this query. Can anyone tell me that? The main query, right? So this is just like the subquery, the main query that comes here, select star from CT or whatever the name, right? So he has given name. Okay, so this is kind of the syntax to write recursive SQL query. Okay, now the very first thing whenever you're writing recursive SQL query, the first thing that you need to figure out is what is your base query. Why? Because during your first iteration only the base query gets executed. So can you tell me, in order to solve this particular problem, what could be the base query? Can anyone guess, or can anyone give me the base query for this particular problem? My problem is this. Okay, so this is what I want to do. Find a hierarchy of employees under a given manager Asha. First thing, I know that I have to use recursion, right? Because I need to recursively find employees under each manager. In order to use recursion, the first thing I need to do is a base query. Can you tell me what would be the base query for this particular problem? Employee under Asha. Select star from employee details where name equal to Asha. Okay, so Nicola, I think what Nicola mentioned is correct. Okay, so what I'm going to do is my base query. Okay, so I'm basically going to use whatever is given here. Instead of name, I'll give the name like CT. This is kind of like the most standard naming that we give for a CT. Okay, and just I'm used to that, so I'll use that. And then comes base query. Okay, so what is base query? In other words, base query is basically your starting point. It's your starting point for the recursion. What is my starting point here? My starting point is I know I need to find only employees who are under Asha. So basically, it's already given. My manager Asha, that detail is already given. So from this table, I only need to find, first I need to find the details where Asha is present. So what I can do is my base query can be select star from employee details where name equal to Asha. Okay, so if I run this, you can see that I'm getting one record. So this kind of can be my starting point, right? So I have the employee ID, their name, their manager ID, and other details. Okay, but I have got, I have something to start with. Okay, now once I have this, then what I need to do is, I know in my very first iteration of recursion, only the first part of this is basically going to get executed. When this will execute, it will return me one record, right? So Asha is shown. Now I need to know who works under Asha, right? That is what I need to fetch. In order to find who works under Asha, I need to I need to take the manager ID of Asha. Okay, sorry, I need to take the employee ID of Asha. Asha's employee ID is 7, right? Then I need to find this 7 in the employee details table, because this is my main table, employee details, right? I know I have got 7 from this base query. So I'll run the employee details. Now in this employee details table, this is kind of like my main table. I need to find 7. Where do I need to find 7? In this column manager ID. I need to fetch all the records where the manager ID is equal to the ID of Asha, that is 7, right? So it should fetch me these two records. That is what I want to do. So in the second iteration, these are the two records that I want to fetch. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain and how I'm thinking. Okay. So basically in this below query here, below union, what I need to do is I'll just put this here in, I will just put this. Okay. Okay. So in the below query here, I will just tell select from, and I want to basically take the data that I have got from first iteration. That is, I want to take the employee ID 7. So I will be using the CTE table, and then I want to join it with this my master table or my main table here, right? Which is the employee details table. And I'm going to give an alias like E. Okay. So I want to this, what is this CT? This CT is the result from the previous iteration. The previous iteration is basically this one, the first iteration, which has returned Asha and her ID as 7, right? I take that ID 7. I need to look for that ID in the manager ID column in the employee details table. So I need to join saying that on the E dot manager ID column is equal to the CT, that is Asha's ID, right? So I say CTE dot ID. Okay. Now hopefully, and here when I'm displaying, I want to display the data for these two employees, right? And this data is coming from the employee details table. So I'll say E dot star. Okay. And I think that's all, and then everything else can stay as it is. Okay. Do I need to have a separate termination condition here? Can you tell me why I don't need a termination condition here separately? Or which is a termination condition here? Because this join condition itself will act as a termination condition. Why? There will be at some stage this join is going to fail. As soon as it fails, that is a termination, right? So I don't need to explicitly have some other termination condition, right? Because initially my query is going to start from Asha. That is what I'm going to get from my base query. I will take from the base query this ID 7, that is the employee ID 7, and I'll search for this employee details in the manager ID column, like what I have written. So in the second iteration, these two records will get matched. Okay. Then when I go into the third iteration, it's going to take the ID of 5 and 6, and it's going to search for 5 and 6 in the manager ID column. Okay. It will match 5 and it will match only these 3 records. Okay, so there is no 6 in this manager ID column, but 5 is present, right? So these 3 records will get returned in the third iteration. Okay, but does it go into the fourth iteration? It will go into the fourth iteration. It will be 2, 3, and 4. It will take this 2, 3, and 4. It will try to search for this ID 2, 3, and 4 in the manager ID column. But in the manager ID column, there is no values 2 and 3 and 4, right? So basically, in the fourth iteration, this join is going to return no records. It's going to fail, right? And that is why it's going to come out of the iteration. Okay. So now if I run this query, now you can see that I have basically got my output. So I have Asha. Okay. Then Asha basically has two employees under her, Michael and Arvind. And then again, Michael has 3 employees under him. That is Satya, Jia, and David. Okay. So is it clear? Okay. If it's not clear, I will show you step by step. Okay. How many people it is not clear? Okay. So let's do one thing. Okay. Let's break this problem. But okay, let's break this problem into multiple parts. Okay. And then we will try to understand this. So again, what I'll do is let's start with each iteration. First iteration, second, third, and fourth. So we'll go up to fourth iteration. Okay. Second, third, fourth. Okay. Now, before I talk about these different iterations, you first need to understand how SQL executes a recursive SQL query. As soon as SQL will see this query, what is it? So generally, when you write an SQL query which has a with clause, okay, with yeah, this with clause, SQL will always execute what is present inside your with clause, right? That is generally what happens. Okay. So again, in this case also, SQL will first execute what is there in the with clause. But additionally here, SQL also sees that you have mentioned the keyword recursive. Okay. As soon as SQL sees this keyword recursive, it will expect certain rules to be followed. Okay. What is rule number one that your recursive SQL query has to follow? The rule number one is you need to have two different queries written here. So there has to be a union. So there has to be a base query, and then there has to be a recursive part of the query. Okay. Why do you need these two queries separately? Because in the first iteration, SQL will only execute the base query. Okay. And then going forward in the second and all the other iterations, SQL will not execute this base query. It will only execute the second part of the query. This is the functionality of recursive SQL query. Don't ask me why it is, but this is how it is designed. Okay, this is how it is designed so that the recursion can happen, right? So this has to be a must. Okay, I hope, does everyone understand this flow in a recursive query? You need to have two queries, base query and the recursive query. First base query executes only once in the first iteration. Going forward in all other iteration, only this query executes. Okay. And then finally the data returned in each iteration is unioned together and then sent as the final result. I hope everyone is clear about this flow. Okay. Now, if you understand this flow, then it is very easy to understand the next things. Okay. So now you tell me, what is going to be executed in the first iteration? You guys tell me, what is going to get executed in the first iteration? Base query. Okay. Which is my base query here? This is my base query, right? So I can straight away put this query here. Okay. In the first iteration, this gets executed. So I'll execute it and I'm getting this result. So whatever is getting returned here, this is my output. I'll just put it here. Okay. The output of first iteration is this one record with all these columns. Okay. Is it clear for everyone? This is clear. First iteration is done. SQL will move on to the second iteration. Okay. Now, can you tell me in the second iteration what gets executed? In the second iteration, what gets executed? It will execute the recursive part, right? It will execute this part. So I will copy this and I will put it here. Okay. Does it execute the base query again in the second iteration? It does not, right? So it will only execute this query. But what is this CT? Can you tell me what is a CT here? Because employee details, we all know it's a table that we have in the database, but CT is not a table that we have in the database. So what is CT? Is CT the base query? No, it is the result set returned from the previous iteration. Okay. For the second iteration, yes, you can tell that whatever the result was returned from the first iteration, that is a CT. But going forward in the next iteration, this CT keeps on changing. Okay. That is how recursion happens. So you remember, I'll just mention it here. CTE is the result returned from the previous iteration. Okay, this is the most important part because your entire recursion happens just because of this one thing. Okay, so otherwise basically the same query would have been executed again and again, right? So this CT changes in every iteration. Why? Because this CT is the output from the previous iteration. Okay, remember that. Now can you tell me for this particular case, what is CT here? What is the data that CT is going to have? Or what is the result set that the CT is going to have? It's Asha's record. Perfect. It's going to have this one record. Okay. How did it get this one record? It basically is it's the query that was executed in the previous iteration. So what I'll do here, I'll just put that whole query. Okay. So I'll just put this whole query. Okay. I'm just going to make it like kind of nested so you understand what happens. So in the second iteration, the previous iteration query becomes the CT that I put here, and then everything else executes as it is. Now, if I run this, now we can see that what happened for Asha's record was my CT. It returned the employee ID as 7, and this is CT. So this will be 7. Okay. So in the employee details table, it will fetch all the records where the manager ID is 7. Okay. That is this one. And which are those records? That is Michael and Arvind's record. So this iteration is going to return these, sorry, this iteration is going to return these two records. Is it clear what happened in the second iteration? You know what happened in first iteration, and now you know what happened in second iteration. I hope everyone is clear, right? Now, can you tell me in the third iteration what happens? What is the query that will get executed in the third iteration? What is the query that executes in the third iteration? Recursive query. Okay. Again, in the third iteration, this same query gets executed. So I'll just copy this recursive query and I'll put it here. Okay. But what is the difference here? The difference is that this CT is different. Okay. This CT is basically the output from the previous iteration, right? So in this particular case, what should CT be? It should be the output from the second iteration. So the output from the second iteration is what? These two records, Michael and Arvind. How did I get Michael and Arvind? By executing this whole query. So what I'll do, I'll just copy this whole query and I'll put it in place of CT here. Okay. So I'll just put it here and I'll just move this to the right. Okay. So this whole thing becomes CT. Okay. I hope this is clear. Okay. Is it clear? Now this CT, what is it returning? It is going to return two records, Michael and Arvind, who are having ID 5 and 6. Okay. So this 5 and 6 is basically what is going to be your CT.ID. It is going to look for 5 and 6 in the manager ID column of your employee details table. Okay. So when I execute this whole thing, now you can see that I'm getting 3 records because it was searching for 5 and 6 in the manager ID column, right? 6 does not exist, so there is no record with 6, but for 5 it does exist. So there are 3 records. Okay. So these 3 records will be returned from the third iteration. So here if I paste it, this is what gets returned. Okay. Is it clear so far? Do you understand how we are going? How we are going from one iteration to another? Okay, everyone is clear. Now tell me in the fourth iteration what happens. Exactly. So what Rachana says, in the next iteration, now it's going to look for 2, 3 and 4 in the manager ID column. Okay. So again, in the fourth iteration, the query that will get executed is this query. So I take that, I put it here. Again, the only difference is the CT. What is CT? CT is the query that was used in the previous iteration or the result that was written from the previous iteration. So that is this whole query. So I'll copy that and I'll put it in the place of CT. I'll put it here. I'll just move this right just to make it neat. And that's it. Okay. So now what happens is this query here is basically going to return 3 records, 2, 3 and 4. It's going to search for 2, 3 and 4 here. It will search in the manager ID column of the employee details table. But I know in employee details table, there are no manager ID with 2, 3 and 4. So this whole query now is going to return no records. As soon as it returns no data, that means this is your termination. That is when it will come out of the recursion. So it will go until the fourth iteration. In the fourth iteration, it does not find any record. Hence, the recursion will end. Is it clear? Do you understand? Everyone? Okay, so everyone is clear now. Okay, that's perfect. Okay. It is advisable if you have to do recursion. This is the only way you can do recursion in PostgreSQL. Now, if you are using Oracle, there is also another way, which is by, I think, connect by. Okay, there is another clause, but that connect by is actually even more complex than recursion. This is actually this particular syntax, right? What you see here, this one. This is kind of supported in every RDBMS. You can do this in Oracle, in SQL Server, in MySQL, or any other. Okay. So there are like couple of changes in some of the RDBMS. I'll talk about that. But this concept works in every RDBMS, and this is actually not that bad. Okay, but like if you have to recursively find a data, this is what you have to use. Okay, so yeah, so okay, so I hope this is clear. Now let's do some modification to this recursion. Okay. generally, if you have to recursively find something, right, this is the best way of in doing in SQL. Of course, you can do the same thing in PLSQL in a different way. Can anyone guess if PLSQL was allowed to be used? Can you imagine what logic or what concept we could use to solve this kind of problem? For loop, right? Not only for loop, if any other type of loop, whether it's while loop or any loop statement, right? Because what is happening here is you're just looping through some set of records again and again until a particular condition is met. This exact same thing can be done in loop, okay? But in SQL, there is nothing like loop. This is kind of like a alternate way of looping the data, okay? But as let's say you are allowed to write a procedure or a function, because inside a procedure and a function, you can basically create a loop. There you don't have to do this. You could probably use the for loop, okay? So yeah, but in SQL, I think this is the only way you can do it. Okay. Now let's do some modification, okay, to this query. So, okay, so I have this particular requirement. Let's see who can solve this problem. Okay. This is my second question here. Okay. So, okay. Rewrite the above query to display only the employee ID, employee name, and manager name. Okay. So if I write the above query, okay, so first of all, I'll just copy this query here. Okay, so this is my query. If I execute this, you can see that I have 6 records, right? And I'm having employee ID, employee name, manager ID, salary, and designation. Okay, now you need to rewrite this query such that you need to display the employee ID, employee name, and manager name. Okay, can anyone solve this? Can you guys try? I'll give you maybe 3-4 minutes. Okay, let's see if anyone can solve this. You can basically reuse this query. There are some modification that you need to do here in order to return the employee ID, employee name, and manager name. Can anyone do it? Just give me your solution. If you want, I can share this whole query with you. Okay, and you just tell me where exactly are you planning to do some changes, or what exactly you can do to make that work. So Kevin, self join, where do we do self join? You start thinking from the very first step. When you are doing recursion, the very first step is base query, right? Now currently the base query that I have is this one. That is, I'm getting employee ID, name, manager ID, salary, designation. How do you modify this base query such that it's going to return only 3 columns? That is employee ID, name, and manager name. How do you do that? You start from there and then you figure out the recursive part of the query. There is no column like manager name, right? So how do you come up with a manager name? What concept do you use? So I see Nicola has shared a query, and Nicola's query is recursivity, employee details, where name is Asha. Select employee ID, employee name. Okay. Nicola has, I think Nicola's solution will probably work, but I think there's a more, it's actually correct, Nicola. I don't think so that's wrong, but I think probably we could, you have done the self join outside. Probably you could have done it inside here, inside the CT itself. Okay, just let's do one thing. Okay, just tell me how do you change the base query such that it's going to return me ID, employee name, and manager name. What do you do? Self join, right? Why do you need to use self join here? Because if you see in the employee details table, I have nowhere manager name is not mentioned anywhere, right? But I have the manager ID. So what I need to do, I need to join this column with this column in order to find the manager name, right? So for example, for Asha, I know that her ID is employee ID is 7 and her manager ID is 1. but this one is also an employee, right? So if I take this one and if I search for that one in this particular column, ID column, then I'll get the name, that is Shripad. So I should basically get Asha and her manager name as Shripad, right? How do I do that? So I need to join a particular column of the same table with another column of the same table. That means I need to use self join. Okay. So that's exactly what we are planning to do. So what we will do here is I'll just reuse the query here. I'll say employee. I'll give this alias like employee. I'll do a self join the table to itself, employee details, and I'm going to call it like manager. Okay. So one is my employee table, another is my manager table. How do I join it? So I say, and here I'm just fetching employee dot name, right? So employee name is Asha, and I want to fetch the I want to fetch the manager ID of that employee. So employee dot manager ID. Okay, for Asha it will basically be one. Okay, and I want to search for that in the manager table, right? In a manager table, the ID itself will be the manager ID, right? So I can tell mng dot ID. Okay, so this hopefully will be for the record Asha, for the employee Asha. Her manager ID is number one. This one I'm searching in the ID column of the manager table. So in that case, if I take the name, it will basically be the manager name, right? So when I'm fetching here, I'm just going to say emp.id as employee ID, and then emp.name as employee name, and then mng.name as manager name. Okay. I hope this is clear. If I run the base query now, okay, I'm just running the base query. Now you can see that I'm still getting one record, but I'm only getting three columns. So I have employee ID, employee name, and manager name. Is it clear what did I do here? How I did a self join and how did I fetch the ID name, ID, and manager name? Everyone clear about this? If this is not clear, you'll not understand the next part. Okay, so you need to be clear. And this, if you had followed my self join class, you should know what is happening here, right? You understand. So okay, and I see everyone saying yes, so that is good. So now I have the first part of this recursion. The next part is when I go to the next part, I need to, so because it's a union, right? Whenever I'm doing a union, there are rules like both the queries need to have same number of columns, same data types, etc. Right? So if I do e dot star, that is employee details table has I think 5 different columns, right? But from the above query, I'm only fetching 3 columns. So here also I need to make modifications such that I only fetch those 3 columns, right? So first of all, I have e table. So instead of fetching the star, I'll just tell e dot id. Okay, that is my employee ID. Then I'll tell e dot name, that is my employee name, and then I need my manager. Now in these two tables, which table is going to have my manager information? Okay, so this is e. I'm fetching the manager ID, ct dot id, right? Hopefully, when I do ct dot name, this is going to be my manager name, right? So let's see, okay, if this actually works. If I'll run this, I'm getting an error. Can anyone tell me why am I getting this error? Anyone? You can read the error message and tell me what is this error. Column ct id does not exist. Why is it saying ct id does not exist? Okay, correct. Because I previously this column was ID, but now I gave an alias like employee ID, right? So now the column name has changed to employee ID. So now let me run this. Still getting an error because ct dot, there's nothing like ct dot name, but there is ct dot employee name. So I will fetch ct dot employee name. Now I'll run this. Now I'm getting the correct output. So I'm getting for Asha, her manager is Shripad. For Michael, his manager is Asha. Arvind's manager is Asha. And Satya, Jia, and David, their manager is Michael. Okay. I think this is more clear output now. Okay. You can easily make out the hierarchy here. Okay. Is it clear? Does it all make sense now? Why do we use recursion for this kind of scenarios? Okay. So Okay, fine. So everyone is clear on this. I'll give you one assignment, okay, with related to this particular task. Let's see who can solve it. So I hope you understand the concept. If you understand the concept, this is your assignment for today. Okay, so I'll say assignment, and your question is 3. Find the okay. So the question is, you need to find the hierarchy of managers for a given employee, David. Okay. Previously, the hierarchy that you did was you had a manager, and everyone who worked under the manager, you listed them down. Now, what I want is you have an employee, David. Okay. If I look at the employee details table, you have the select star from you have an employee, David, that is this guy. Okay, you need to find all the managers above him. So David's manager is number 5. Number 5 is Michael. So David's manager is Michael. Then Michael's manager is Asha. Asha's manager is Shripad. So you need to give me that hierarchy. Okay, it's kind of like reverse. Okay, can you guys try to solve this problem? It's just a reverse of what we did in today's class. Okay. Okay, so try to solve this. Okay, and I think that's all. Now I'll just show you one last thing. Okay, now I know some of you guys are using Oracle, right? And I think some of you are using SQL Server. So if you're using some other RDBMS, okay, there is a very minor change in the syntax of this, which I'll just mention. Okay, so let's say this was okay. I'll just use the query that I have used. Okay, and I'll just mention in Oracle. Okay, so if you are using Oracle, the only change that you need to do in the syntax is, first of all, this recursive keyword is not required. In Oracle, you cannot mention that keyword recursive. Okay, that is not required. Second thing is, inside the CT, you need to provide all the columns that will be returned from this CT. Okay, so in my case, I will be returning employee ID. It will return comma employee name and then comma manager name. Okay, so that's one thing. And then I think okay, and then finally I think in Oracle and in SQL Server, union is not supported. I think you should always use union all. Okay, so I think that's the only things. Okay, so you cannot use recursive keyword. You need to give the alias names in the CT when you're defining the CT name itself, and you need to use union all. Okay, and this will basically, I think, if you're using SQL Server, right? Okay, so if you're using SQL, if you're using SQL Server, okay, then again everything is the same. I think only this is probably not required. Okay, so you don't need recursive keyword and you need to use union all. Then everything else, the syntax is same. So are there anyone who is using Oracle or SQL Server here? If you are, then when you're practicing this, try to follow this syntax. Okay, the logic, the concept, everything is the same. Just this minor change in the syntax. Okay, just you can, because you might execute the query that I have given and it might give you error. So just try out this one. Okay, so in SQL Server this will work, and in Oracle I think this will work. Okay, so then everything else is the same. Okay, what else? Okay, so there's one more thing that I wanted to mention here. Okay, now I have this query. Okay, now in this query itself I can add one more column. Okay, so I told you that in each iteration some results get returned, right? If you want to know in which iteration results are getting returned, what you can do is, I know this base query is the first thing that executes, right? So by default I can give like this one as my level. Okay, so I can say this is my level, LVL. Okay, I'm just giving a short form, LVL. Okay, so this is my fourth column. So the base query, always the level is 1. Okay, but then the second part of the query, it will always be level plus 1, right? So what I'll do, I'll just say LVL plus 1, and again this will also be called as level. Okay, so in the second iteration this will be 2, When it goes to the third iteration, LVL will be 2. So it will be 2 plus 1, 3, and so on. Okay. So now if I execute this query, now you can see that based on this LVL, you can, this is my level column. I can also rename this to like iteration. Okay. So in my first iteration or something like that. Okay. So, or maybe I'll just do that iteration. Okay. So just for the sake of better understanding, I'll call it like iteration. Okay. And now you see that it's telling me in the first iteration, this record was written. In the second iteration, these two records was written. Okay. And here is your proof, right? Because this is 2. And then for the third iteration, this is 3 here, and these 3 records were written. Okay. Now this is just an, sometimes you might require to have that. Okay. So do you guys understand why this value gets changed every time? I hope you do. Everyone understands that, right? What is the E in condition query? E.id. Where is E? E is the alias, right? E is the alias that I have given for this table. So E basically represents this table, employee details. Okay, so let's move on. Okay. I hope everyone is now clear about recursion. I don't expect you to become like master of recursion, but at least if someone asks you, go to an interview and someone asks you for finding a hierarchy of manager and employees, which is actually a very common question in interviews, trust me. Okay. Then you should probably be able to answer that. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's all I had with recursion. Now let's move on to the next concept. Any doubts or any questions related to recursion or anything else? Or can we move on to the next one? Few days I got an email that Lightal would shut down. I need to know. Okay, so Balaji, I already explained this in the beginning of the class. You can download all the recordings, everyone, whoever is hearing this for the first time. Okay, so let's move on to the next concept. But before that, let me take a backup of all of this. Okay, so let me create a new window, and we say pivot table, okay, or cross tab. Okay, so has anyone used pivot before anywhere? DDL of the dataset you are using. The DDL of the dataset is already given in the class files. So I basically copy everything and put it into a text file. In that text file, you'll basically find the dataset as well. So everything is already given. Okay, it will be for each session, there is a text file that is created. It will have the dataset and the scripts and queries and everything. Okay, so how many people have used pivot? In Excel, only in Excel. Okay. Have directly used sum of case. Sum of case. Okay, fine. In Power BI. Okay. Okay, so some people are aware of what pivot is. Can you tell me, if you have to define what is a pivot? What does pivot do actually? Okay. Okay, so you guys are right. In general, you can say pivot is something that can be used to aggregate data and then represent column to rows to column, right? So row level data, you can represent it into multiple columns and you can aggregate the data at the same time. Okay, this is something what pivot can be used to do. Okay, now let's try to understand this concept using an example. What I'm going to take is I'm going to take a new data set for that. Okay, and I'm going to take a interview problem. Okay, and we'll try to solve that interview problem and then try to understand. Okay, so first of all, let me take this data set that I have. Just a minute. Okay, so this is a data set and I'm just going to, okay, so the data set is created and let me say, so let's start from this. Okay, so I have a new data set that is created. Okay, let us first understand the data set and then we will move ahead. It's basically, I think it's San Francisco public salaries. Okay, this table has information about a particular city and the salary information about employees. Okay, so here I have an ID, a unique identifier for each employee. I have the employee name, then I have different years, then it's the total salary they received in that particular year. Okay, and what was their job title. Okay, so this is what I have. Now what I want to do, or what I want to find from this data set, is this one. Okay, identify the highest salary each employee made for each year. Okay, so I need to write a query to identify the highest salary each employee made for each year. Okay, do you guys understand what we need to do? Do you guys understand this data set? Everyone clear? It's pretty straightforward, right? You have a data set with the employee and their salary information for different years. Okay, what we need to do is, for each employee we need to know what is the highest salary they earned in each year. Okay, how do you do this? Forget about pivot. Okay, let's say pivot is not, you don't have pivot currently. If you had to, can you solve this problem first of all without pivot? Okay, if yes, how would you solve it? Can anyone think? Partition employees. Okay, group by year, max salary, group by each year. Okay, window function, partition by. Okay, window function. Okay, okay, so I think some of you are right. In fact, your thinking is right. Some are telling using window function and some are telling using group by. Okay, you could probably solve it using both, probably. Okay, but a better approach is basically using a group by. Okay, I'll tell you why. Read the problem. The problem tells, for each employee, find the highest salary for each year. When you read this problem, the first thing that should come to your mind is, I think I need to do some aggregation here. Okay, what kind of aggregation? Highest salary. When you say highest salary, what is that aggregation function we should use? It's max, right? So we basically, when they say highest salary, it's basically the maximum salary. Maximum salary for what? What is the maximum salary? Maximum salary for each year, right? It could happen that there could be some employees who had multiple salaries within a year. Maybe they change their job or whatever. Okay, I don't know if that data is available, such employees are available in this data set, but it can happen, right? So we need to find the max of salary for each year and for each employee. What does that mean? You can just group the data for each employee and for each year and then just fetch the max of salary. Hopefully that should work, right? Let's see if it actually works. Let's try to do that. Okay, and I think I forgot to mention one more thing here. Represent, and I think I forgot to mention that. Okay, represent each year salary in separate columns along. Okay, something like this. Represent each year salary in separate columns. Okay, this is required. Okay, to solve that. So let's try to solve our problem. So I have this particular table. I told you that we will group the data based on employee name and what else did I say? Year, right? And here I'll just put both these columns here, and then I'll say max of total pay, and I'm just going to call it like as max pay. Okay, and let me just run this. Now I'm getting 200 records. First of all, in this table, how many records were there? Okay, there were 200 records. Okay, so that means each employee for each year only has one salary. Okay, one record. But you might have a data set where there might be multiple as well. Okay, but this should still work because we are trying to find the highest salary for each year for each employee, right? So we will always get one record for a combination of employee and a particular year, right? And I'm getting some data here. Okay, so I'm getting the data here. I can see that there is an employee, and let's say I'll sort the data just so that we can properly see it. So I'll sort the data also based on these two columns, and now I'll run this. Now you can see that I have employee Anna Braun, and she for 2011 she earned this particular salary. Then there is Aaron Schmidt, who for 2012 earned this salary, and etc. Okay, so yeah, there might be someone who was present in 2 different years. Let's see. Okay, so I can see here 2 records, Emila Patrick. Okay, so Emila Patrick for 2013 earned this much and 2014 earned this much. Ideally, what I would want is for each employee, I would only want one record. Okay, and this 2013 ka salary should be in one column, 2014 ka salary should be in another column, right? So now I have this data here, but I want to transform the data from this column so every year ka data is present in row level, right? Now I want to have a separate column for 2011 and 2012 and whatever the years are present, right? So how can I do that? Can you tell me how can I convert row level data into column level? Just can you tell me how do we do that? And forget about pivot. Let's say pivot does not exist. Okay, is it possible to transform row level data into column level without using pivot? Is it possible? If yes, how? Anyone? If you do union, right, what happens? If you do union, it just increases the number of rows. Now I want to increase the number of columns. How do I increase the number of columns? Anyone? Abhishek says case. Think. How would you increase the number of columns? What concept of SQL you could use to solve this problem? Think. If you want to create a new column, okay, let's say you're not creating a new column in a table, but in your query you want to have some value represented as a separate column. What is it that you generally use? We have done this before. We use case, right? We use case statement. Whenever you have a query, you want to add some value separately in a new column. What do we use? We use case, right? So we can try to do this using case. Okay, let's see how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'll tell I have the employee here. I'll create a column for 2012. First of all, let's see how many different years are present, okay, in this table. So what I'll do is I'll say distinct of year. I see that I have 2011, 12, 13 and 14. So there are 4 years, okay. So I need 4 new columns to be added into this column, into this query, right? So what I'll do is I'll keep this query as it is and I'll just write it again here, okay. And this time I'll do one thing. So I will say case when. So I'm getting this employee. So if this employee was working in 2011, then his salary should, whatever pay he has got, it should be returned in the column 2011. You can see that Anna Brown has only data for 2011. That means for 2013, 14 and whatever the other year, there should be basically 0 or null because there is no salary, right? At least as per this data set. So what I can do is when year is equal to 2011, okay, then I'll say whatever the column was from that table, okay. So let's say for now I will not do the aggregation, okay. I will just remove this aggregation. I will remove all of this, okay, and I'll say then total pay, okay, and yeah, end. Okay, and I'm just going to call this column as pay underscore 2011. Okay, and I'll just try to run this. Okay, if I run this now, you can see that, and let's say I will do order by employee name. Okay, and if I run this, I can see that for Anna Brown for 2011, because she had some salary in 2011, that is what I'm getting here. Okay, but for, I think, for Aaron Schmidt and for other employees in 2011, they did not earn anything, so they are not getting anything. Okay, they are basically, it's showing as null. But I know there might be some employees who might have earned some salary in some other years, and I know when I took the distinct of the years, there were 4 different years. So I have created one column for 2011. Probably I should create similar columns for all the other years, right? So what I'll do, I'll just repeat the same thing. So I'll put it like 2012, 13, and 14, and I'll give the column names like 12, 13, and 14. Okay. Now let me run this. Now you can see that I'm getting probably all the data. Okay, so looks like for Anna Brown only in 2011 she earned some salary, that is why here I have some data, but for all other columns it is blank. For Aaron Schmidt, he earned salary only in 2012, so that is what is mentioned here. For all other years it is null. Okay, there was also some other employee, I think, at the column 49 and 50, right, if I remember. Yeah, so this 49 and 50, this employee Emila C Patrick, you can see that I think this particular person had salary in 2014 as well as in 2013. Okay, so you're getting two different records, but the data is represented in two different columns. Okay, so I'm getting basically the output here. Okay, but there is one problem here. Can you guess what is the problem in this particular result? 3 rows, 2 rows, right? This next one, Emily, is someone else. Okay, ideally what I wanted was, I wanted for each employee, for each year, their salary to be represented. Okay, just that the year salary should have been in separate columns, but for every record, every employee, there should only have been one record. Okay, but here I can see that for this particular employee there are two records. Why there are two records? Because they they had they were earning some money in 2 different years, right? Now this is just two records here, but there might be some employees who might have multiple such records, right? And they might have earned in all the 4 years. If they earned in all the 4 years, then they would have 4 different entries. Okay, we would not want that. So how do I fix that? Can you tell me, from two records, if I only want one record for each employee, how do I do that? Okay, group by what? Group by the employee name, right? I will group the data based on the employee name. And then what I will do is, okay, so for example, right, just for the sake of making it simple, I'm just going to take one particular employee detail here. Okay, I'll take employee name equal to this particular employee. Okay, I'll take this particular employee, and now let me just run this. Okay, so just for the sake of understanding, I have two records here and this much. Now what I want is, I only want one record, and when I'm taking one record, if I take, let's say, the first record, then I will get this data for 2013, but for 2014 I'll get null, right? How can I fix that? Can anyone tell me? I need to group the data. I need to group the data based on the employee name, but I still need to fetch wherever the value is present. Can you tell me how do I solve that? I do a sum or anything else, max. Okay, so when I group the data for based on this particular column, it means then I can apply aggregation to all the remaining columns, right? So when I'm applying aggregation, what is that aggregation function that I can use, such that if there is a null and some other value, it will always fetch some other value. Probably it should be max, right? Max of null and some other value should be that other value, right? So when I do max of these two records, it should fetch this. When I do max of these two records, it should fetch this. Hopefully then I will get the correct result. Okay, so what I'll do here is, I'll say, first of all, group by employee name, and then here I want to do the max, right? Instead of doing just max of total pay, I will do max of this whole case. Okay, so I'll say max of this whole thing. Okay, and I'll copy this, I'll put it here, I'll put it here, I'll put it here, and I'll close here and here. Okay, now let me run this, and now you can see that I'm basically getting the output that I wanted. So one employee, one record for each employee, and wherever their salary was present in year, it is all represented. Is it clear? Do you understand how we went ahead solving this problem? Okay. Now this was only for one employee, but we are trying it to do it for every employee. So I'll just remove this filter condition, and now I will run it. Now you can see that I'm getting all the employees, and for every employee there will only be one record. Okay. Previously there were 200 records. Now I'm only getting 198, and it is because I think there are only two employees who are earning salary for more than 1 year. Okay. So this is basically how we can solve it using case. Okay, now the best part about this particular solution is that this solution will work in every RDBMS, because in every RDBMS case is supported. Okay, so we have just used case to convert row into column level. If you remember previously in the database, in the initial table we had, all the data was at row level, right? All the years were at row level. Now in our final solution we have the data in column level, so 2011 here, 2012 here, and so on and so forth, right? So this is one way. Whenever you go to any interview or something, someone asks you if you have to convert data from row level to column level, how can you do that? You can of course tell pivot, but you can also tell we can do the same using case as well. Okay, and this is why. Now this is one way of solving it using case statement. Okay, but of course we can solve the same problem using something called as pivot. Okay, now the problem is pivot is not supported in every RDBMS. Okay, so for example, if you have to do the same thing in, let's say, Oracle, okay, then you can use pivot. If you have to do the same thing in SQL, if you have to do the same thing in SQL Server, then SQL Server also supports pivot. Okay, but if you have to do in PostgreSQL, okay, in PostgreSQL pivot is not supported, but they have something called as crosstab. Okay, it kind of does the same thing that pivot does, but the syntax and the flow of how the query executes is different from pivot. Okay, and then when it comes to MySQL, neither pivot is supported nor crosstab is supported, but there is case statement. Okay, so this case, whatever query we have written here, this will work in MySQL. Okay, in fact this will work in every RDBMS, but if you are using MySQL, then this is the only way you can do it. Okay, there is no pivot and crosstab. Okay, so now what we'll do is, okay, I think we are a little short of time, so I'm not sure if I should get started with pivot and crosstab. Probably I'll do it in the next class. Okay, I'll start with pivot in the next class. Okay, uh, because I'll have to start and then I'll have to stop in the middle. So rather I do completely in the next class. So I'm going to stop the class now. I'll look at some Q&A. Do you have, was it clear everything today? Recursion and just using this case, and this is very useful query. Okay, because you don't have to always use pivot. If it is simple, then this is probably a better way of doing it. Okay, what if the number of columns are more to write in the case statement? Then okay, if there are too many columns, then there is no, if you have to use case statement, then you have to create all those values. Okay, there is no shortcut when it comes to case statement. Probably if you're using crosstab, there is a way of dynamically passing the column values, but when it comes to case, you have to mention all the column names. Okay, okay, we'll see about pivot in next class. Can you take an example of customer retention cohort on a monthly? Currently I will not take anything other than what is mentioned in the course content, Abhishek, because I think we are a little short of time. So tomorrow I will be covering pivot and crosstab, and we will look at materialized views, and then hopefully next week we'll cover procedures and user defined functions, and then finally on the last class we'll talk about another case study. Okay, it will be a very interesting case study. Um, the advanced level SQL bootcamp, this already covers all the advanced concept, recursion, pivot, procedures, and user defined functions, and materialized views. These are all part of advanced concepts. Okay, if you're just doing simple, if you're like a beginner, I don't think so you would be using materialized views, or you would be using pivot or recursion. Okay, these are something that are advanced, but I think what you're specifically asking is for maybe performance tuning or maybe PLSQL. Those will be something in the future. Okay, currently I am planning to do Python. Okay, so uh, PLSQL and other things maybe in the future. For resume, right? Let me see. Okay, um, I'll probably have one session in the new platform that I'm planning to do. I want to do one test class just to see if everything works. Probably that is something where I will talk about resume, or I'll actually make a YouTube video where I'll share the resume that I basically use to get a job here, and which I actually recommend everyone to use. Okay, probably that, yeah, probably YouTube video or some free session in the new platform. Okay, switch to other domains in data analytics. You can always switch domains. Okay, I started my career in banking domain. I worked in banking domain for, I think, 6 years, and then for the next 2 years I worked in a different domain. It was a storage domain. Okay, it was completely different. Okay, and then after that I switched to uh, it was about mm, crime. Okay, what was it? It was about fraud detection. Okay, so it was again in finance, but it was about fraud detection. It was a completely different domain. Okay, it was, I worked there for 1 year, and then I moved into insurance domain. So in insurance domain I worked for 5 years, and now I'm back to banking domain. So you can always change domain. Okay, yeah, and everyone changes domain. So I don't think so there is anyone who has worked in the same domain for their whole career. Okay, uh, I need some help in designing the database where I can get correct info, like what I can consider before creating. I think you will need to do it yourself, Balaji. I generally do not provide a one-to-one support, just not for anything else. I just cannot manage the time. Okay, so what is CTID? I have already explained CTID in one of the earlier classes. Probably you should watch that, Pure. There is any plan for Snowflake session after SQL? Snowflake will be. Actually, I'm making a video on Snowflake. Basically, I want to post that video tomorrow, but I don't know if I'll be able to complete. Let's see. If I complete, I'll post the video tomorrow or next week, where I am actually building a project using Snowflake. Okay, so but yeah, but I am not having any plans to do complete Snowflake session as of now. Maybe something in the future. Suppose there are two records there where they don't have managers like ID. Suppose there are two records where they don't have managers like ID1, and if you don't want to pass hard coded value Asha. So what is your question, Pros? Maybe you can show a proper example just to better understand what you are looking for. We'll start bootcamp for advanced SQL, also where performance tuning. Uh, in all the SQL concepts are actually covered in this bootcamp. Okay, the only thing pending is PLSQL concepts, but for PLSQL is a separate thing where we will have to talk about the loop. But I am not planning to do that anytime soon. Maybe I will do it in the future. I see that there is shortage of PLSQL learnings, right? But yeah, but let's see in the future. Please let me know how to download that. I think someone else probably can help in how to download the recording. I don't know why everyone is struggling to find how to download the recording. You just need to go to the class page. At the bottom of the class page, you will see all the recordings. So today's session 17, so you will see all the 17 recordings. Don't click on any of the recording. Just under the recording itself, you will see the download button. So for each recording, you will see the download button. You should just click on that. What if salary is given month-wise and need to get max of salary for a year? Prashant, maybe you can come up with a proper question where, like, with proper data set, and then you can share that question and we can then try to solve it. Okay. It's very difficult to understand the problem without looking at the data set or the structure of the table. Probably, maybe you can come up with something more clearer, and then we can take it like an assignment. As an entry level, what a company expects from a candidate in SQL. For an entry level, right, you should be comfortable with joins. Okay, if I have to tell you, you should be comfortable with, okay, what are the different concepts that I have covered? Everything. You should be comfortable with joints. You should know about uh, joints is the most important thing. You should know how to uh, if you know how to use CTE and subqueries and then window functions, that's it. Okay, you don't even have to worry about recursion and pivot and all of that. Okay, joins will be the most important thing. In fact, actually, I have made one video on YouTube where I have explained you, depending on your level of experience or expertise, how much SQL you should know. Okay, there I have actually like pinpointed which exact SQL concept you should know if you are a beginner, if you are intermediate, and if you're advanced. Okay, so probably that video you can watch, and that can give you complete details. Waiting. Python will be starting next month. Please also tell us about SQL projects for data. I'm going to do an SQL project next month. Next week. It will be in YouTube. Hopefully, you can follow that. Yeah, and I'll make another video where I will talk about how you can find data sets and case studies for SQL project or for your portfolio. Okay, I have some plans to do that video. I've actually been away from YouTube for 2 months, but I have already planned at least 8 to 10 different videos on SQL and Python. So hopefully, it is all related to the question that you're asking here. Can you describe a little about upcoming case study session for resume and interviews? The upcoming case study, I will be doing that case study next week, Sadaf. So probably you should wait until next week. What is prerequisite for learning Python? Nothing. If you're going to take my Python class, you have you don't need any prerequisite. Everything I will do it during the class, right from installing Python and setting up your IDE and everything. If you have no prior programming knowledge, the Python class that I will take, it will be good enough for you. Okay. Okay, what else? What is the cost of the? I'm planning to keep it around $30, same like this SQL course, because I think that is kind of the sweet spot for a course price. Ideally, I would say $50 would be, which makes sense. Okay, for the time that I need to put, but I know a lot of people find $50 to be very expensive, but $30, I think most people are comfortable. I might be wrong, just correct me, but I think $30 is what I'm planning to do. Does Python covers data analysis part? I I will cover all the basics of Python, okay, and I will probably move until I'll do a project using Pandas and NumPy, okay, but I will not get into details about data analysis, okay. Probably for data analysis, I'm planning to do separate bootcamp after the Python bootcamp is done, where I'll take some 5 to 10 different data analytics projects and just do a bootcamp where I will be doing projects, okay. So, but that will be a separate thing. Does Python covers? Okay, very easy to do that. But can you provide me the sources to learn about data modeling? I have already covered data modeling in this bootcamp where I talked about normalization. So data modeling is, there are many things that you need to consider when you're doing data modeling. Normalization is the very first thing that you need to consider. That one I have covered in the bootcamp, but other things related to data modeling, probably you should Google it. Not part of this class. Is BI analyst good start for data analyst, data scientist? BI analyst is a very good start. Okay, I think it's a pretty good role. BI analyst is a very good role. So it's a good start. You can easily move into data scientist in the future. Thanks, Anudeep. Will there be a certification for Python? I think you will have certification. You'll get everything. You'll get recordings. You will have certifications. Yeah, I think it's going to be similar to this. Probably you'll. The only additional thing is probably it's going to be like a Zoom call, so you can interact through audio or video, I think. Do you work on GCP resources? Do you recommend any courses for learning GCP concepts for professional data engineering, Google certification? I have not used GCP so far. I have used AWS, but I think Google provides many courses themselves, right? I think they have some courses on Coursera as well, and also on their own platform, but I'm not sure about that, Divya. Python Bootcamp, I have all of your email ID. I will drop you an email when the bootcamp is ready, and I'll also announce it in my LinkedIn. So probably you follow me on LinkedIn so that you don't miss any updates. I think that's all, guys. I'm going to see you all tomorrow, and yeah, so I think that's all. Let me just copy this for now. Okay, so that's all, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.